In a quiet town, nestled between hills and lush greenery, lived the Williams family. The family was blessed with 4 beautiful children and a mother, Grace, who was the epitome of grace and patience. However, their home was not filled with the love and laughter it deserved. This was because of David, the husband and father, who had turned his heart away from his family. David was once a loving husband, but as the years went by, he changed. He became arrogant, selfish, and cruel. He had no regard for his wife, choosing instead to lavish his time, attention, and money on other women outside their marriage. While Grace and the children struggled, David was busy showering his side chick with expensive gifts, taking her on vacations, and treating her as though she were his queen. But the woman who bore him 4 children, the woman who prayed for him every day, was treated with nothing but contempt. Grace endured it all. Every slap, every insult, every act of negligence. She endured it not because she was weak, but because she was strong in her faith. She believed in the power of prayer. Every night, she knelt before God and cried for her husband, asking him to change David's heart and restore their home. Her children saw her pain. They heard her sobbing quietly in the dark of the night, but she always told them to forgive their father, to pray for him. A heart filled with love and prayer can change even the hardest of souls, she always said. David's infidelity grew worse. He became reckless, drinking heavily and barely coming home. The little money he made was spent on his mistress while his children wore torn clothes and went to school hungry. Grace struggled to provide for them, taking up petty trading to ensure they had something to eat. She sold fruit in the market, endured insults from customers, and battled exhaustion just to make ends meet. One fateful evening, David returned home after a drunken night out. His eyes were red, and his breath reeked of alcohol. The children, scared of his unpredictable moods, scurried to their rooms, while Grace, despite everything, approached him with concern. "David, you need to stop drinking like this," she said gently. His response was a sharp slap across her face, sending her to the floor. "Don't tell me what to do," he roared before staggering to bed. That night, Grace wept. She felt the sting of both his hand and his disregard. But even as she cried, she whispered prayers for his soul. Then one day, David began to have issues with his vision. At first, it was blurry, but soon, he could hardly see. He went to different hospitals, hoping for a cure, but the doctors gave him devastating news: his condition had worsened, and he would go completely blind if he didn't get an eye transplant. It was a moment of reckoning for him. His mistress, the woman he had given his heart to, abandoned him the moment she realized he had nothing to offer anymore. None of his so-called friends stayed by his side. He was left alone in the darkness he had created for himself. Now blind and helpless, David had no choice but to return to the home he had neglected. For the first time, he saw the kindness he had ignored. Grace, the woman he had abused and humiliated, took care of him without hesitation. She guided him, fed him, and bathed him. He was too ashamed to speak, but she didn't need his words. She only needed to love. At first, David was resistant to her care. He flinched when she touched him, ashamed of the way he had treated her. But with time, he softened. He started listening when she prayed, and he began to feel a deep longing to change. He regretted every slap, every insult, and every time he turned his back on his family. When the doctor informed him that a matching donor had been found for an eye transplant, David was relieved but also confused. Who would willingly give their eye for him? He didn't ask too many questions, he just wanted to see again. The surgery was successful, and when he opened his eyes, he saw the world clearly for the first time in years. But the first person he saw in that hospital room broke him completely. It was Grace. But something was wrong. Her face was as beautiful as ever, but she had only one eye. He looked at her in horror and confusion, his heart pounding. "What happened to your eye?" he asked, his voice shaking. Grace lowered her head and smiled softly. She tried to avoid his gaze, but before she could answer, the doctor spoke. "She gave you her eye, David," the doctor said simply. David gasped. His chest tightened as if an unseen force had gripped his heart. He turned to his wife, hoping it wasn't true. "Grace, tell me he's lying." She still smiled, but her lips trembled. "You needed to see, David. I could not watch you suffer in darkness." Tears streamed down David's face, the same eyes that had once looked upon her with contempt now overflowing with regret and love. "Why would you do this for me after everything I put you through?" She reached out and held his hand, her voice gentle yet firm. "Because love forgives. Because God forgives. And because I vowed before Him to love you in good times and in bad." David broke down, sobbing like a child. He held her close, whispering words of apology over and over again. He realized, at that moment, that he had spent years chasing shadows while the true light of his life had been by his side all along. From that day on, David changed. He became the husband Grace had prayed for all those years. He became the father his children had longed for. He showered them with love, apologized for every tear he had caused, and worked tirelessly to rebuild their broken home. Years later, their story became one of inspiration in their community. Their home, once filled with sorrow, became a place of love and laughter. David and Grace started a foundation to help struggling families, teaching others the power of forgiveness and unconditional love. Their children grew up to be successful, always remembering the lesson their mother had taught them, that true strength lies in love, faith, and forgiveness. And though Grace had only one eye, she saw more clearly than anyone else, because she saw with a heart full of love. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. God bless you.